talking with Hal Rubino, sitting in Tingsboro, Massachusetts, and I, Jim Ritchie Dunham, am sitting in Belchertown in central western Massachusetts, talking about work that we did with Delta R back in 2000, 2001. Delta R was a small company working in the hydrocarbon asset valuing industry of the oil business. And they were looking to integrate different models to have people understand hydrocarbon asset valuation as an integrated system. And so they wanted to use system dynamics. And so that's how they found us, and they wanted to integrate it into their own software platform. Then they would take teams of executives, and through a process of understanding the separate models and how they integrated and how decisions integrated across to increase the value of the hydrocarbon or the oil and gas assets. We worked with them in their base in Katy and Houston, that area, Texas, for a couple weeks, understanding the system dynamics, how to model that in their own software, and using the PowerSim software at the time for the system dynamics modeling, and modeling some oil field issues with them. And so we did that and integrated that into their product and their understanding and into their process, and then took that with them. You went with them into 2 different sites for extended periods of time in Africa and one in Europe, working with them with the simulation, with team processes, with the executive teams of those leadership teams of those oil companies, and did some systems mapping also. So I'd like to, from what you remember from that work of 17, 18 years ago, what were a couple of the fun things that we discovered in that? And again, that was a year or 2 before we came out with a book, Managing from Clarity. So we were still in the beginning developments of our technique and technology and platform there. But what are some of the insights that you have or remembers from that project work?
So one was the flexibility that the systemic point of view provided Delta R and their ability to speak with their clients around what simulation alternatives were available. It added breadth to their toolkit, not just in some visual ways, but also because we introduced nonlinear and qualitative variables inside of their calculations, estimations, and simulations, which was relatively new for them. So there was a bit of a behind the scenes thing going on. And we also I got to draw a single page high level map that included all that was going on in the box, if it were. So there was a way to gain insight through graphics and arrows and simple kind of pictorial view of all the complexity going on, the calculations underneath. So it raised the level of confidence that between their client and Delta R and us, they could see that we knew what was going on. It wasn't just made up. It was also the early introduction to the GRASP ideas. They weren't fully fleshed out, but it was my first experiment with trying to create a GRASP-like structure for describing a complex system like that. And I found that to be, for me, very fascinating. It really simplified the way I got to explain which resources the enabling and value driving was in early terms that we were using, or those are the ones before them, I forget that, but that concept of dependency across those kind of resources was a very revealing conversation for me, as well as for the Delta. The guys, they laughed at that. I thought it was pretty cool.
That's great. I also remember being blown away by watching somebody code right there with us on their team. And once he understood what the basics of system dynamics modeling were with stocks and flows and how they interconnect, he, within a couple of days, created a little module within their software that did all of the system dynamics modeling and the graphic interface of it.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is really going to take a long time because the software that exists right now is very complicated and must have taken a long time and is really big software. And he goes, yeah, okay. And he put it together like a day. And okay. So the basic functionality, if you know what you're doing with modern software tools, and this is modern as of 17, 18 years ago, it was easy for him to put together. And that was really cool to see also.
Sure enough.
Yeah. Excellent. So, and then you got to go, as I said, apply it and do a lot of road tripping to different places in Africa and Europe, applying it and seeing how different teams worked with that integrated understanding of different elements of the oil field coming together and how that influences how we value the underlying asset that we have there in the oil based on how we can integrate these different components. So applied systems strategic thinking.
Yeah.
On the field. That's great.
I remember there was, I forget exactly which ones, but the idea of indicators that we got to explore a bit more in depth from the management side. So one would be the investor side. What would it cost? What would we get? That would be the returns. But what manage the thing. And from a systemic perspective, they got a line of sight to different kinds of indicators from a systemic perspective that were not on the radar before that came onto the radar. And that was also very helpful to them. Client as well as Delta R.
That's great. Yeah, so integration of our techniques and the system dynamics into somebody else's software for demonstrating an integrated understanding at a strategic level of a whole system, in this case, an oil field, and how that changes what you're paying attention to of the underlying asset of the oil, how the different parts coming together can give you a different understanding of that. And we had integrated into not only their process, but into their software of how to do that at a very basic level. Great. That's great. Thank you.
Great.